So, coral reefs as a habitat are pretty exciting. Some people consider them to be the rainforests of the sea, but they're actually much more diverse and way more productive than the rainforests. Coral reefs only cover about 1% of the ocean floor, and the ocean covers about 75% of the earth, so it's a very, very, very small fraction of the earth that actually is coral reef. But over 25% of marine species depend on coral reefs at some point in their life, whether it's for reproduction or for food or whatever. So it's a very, very important environment, although it's only a small space. In the coral reefs you can find over 4,000 different species of fish. That's out of about 30,000 species described worldwide, including all the ones in the ice and in the rivers and in footprints from hippos or whatever. So it's a pretty big fraction lives on the reefs. And then about 700 species of coral worldwide, with 70 reef-building species found here in Hawaii. A lot of those species are only found in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. The water temperature between there and here is great enough that we see different types of coral reef. These islands, this is roughly 20 or so that you'll see on a regular basis, although I'm not sure how many have been spotted. Then within 200 miles of shoreline of Hawaii, there's over almost 1,200 species of fish. I got that number from NOAA. And I don't know what fish they're looking at, because I certainly haven't seen that many kinds, but they even say that there's about 550 species of nearshore fish, so that would probably mean anything within about 3 miles of shore. So the reefs in Hawaii have sort of a cool life history. So they all go through the same sort of progression from birth to death. And what happens is you get this new island pops up out of the ocean, for example, this island. And it's got some pretty steep shoreline. So because corals can only live between 0 and 300 feet, the corals will colonize the edge but won't be spread out very far. And you get what's called a fringing reef because it's just on the fringe of the island. As the island gets older, it will erode and weather away. Another process that happens here in Hawaii that brings the islands lower is actually the cooling of the crust. As it moves away from the hot spot, it contracts and it pulls the islands down with it. That's, for example, well, I guess that's for another thing is this island is actually so massive that it puts so much pressure on the crust that Maui is actually sunk down in a hole that the Big Island has created. And then Oahu, just past that, is on the bulge on the outside of that. So if you think about dropping a pebble in a pond, if you freeze it just as it hits the surface, you'll see this kind of a bowl shape with a little bulge on the outside, and that's exactly what's happening around here. And that's why we have these big coral flats on Oahu that are up either out of the water or right at water level. So all these islands in the main Hawaiian Islands all have these fringing reefs. But as you go farther northwest, you'll start to find barrier reefs around some of the islands. So what's happening is, although the island is shrinking, the reef is continuing to grow and stay near the surface. And at that point, it's actually trapping sediments that allow plant life to grow. So you might see naupaka or coconut or whatever on those islands. And then eventually, the island will subside completely beneath the surface of the ocean, and then you're left with just the coral reef around, and that's called an atoll. And then beyond that, the reefs will be so far north that it's too cold for them to survive. They'll die, they'll start to break down, and then you'll just be left with a seamount. And those seamounts, you can follow the dots all the way up the plate, all the way to the Aleutian chain where they're being subducted underneath that plate. So there's a little animation here. This just kind of shows the reef in pink growing as the island is subsiding, and showing you how the atoll is formed from what we have here. And I want to thank the author of this thing for coloring it like a watermelon, because every time I see this I get hungry and thirsty.